I've worked at 5 major tech companies over the last 12 years, and I'm here to tell you something that nobody in the tech industry wants to admit. The companies that are laying off thousands of people while posting record profits aren't doing it because they have to. They're doing it because it's profitable. Last week, I was scrolling through my feed, and I saw something that made me stop. A major tech CEO announced that they're cutting their workforce by 10%, 10,000 people, fired in a single week. The same week, their company reported a 35% increase in revenue. 35%. And then, in their earnings call, they announced they're investing $135 million in artificial intelligence, not to help their employees, to replace them. This is what nobody talks about. This is what the mainstream media glosses over. This is what tech bros celebrate on Twitter while thousands of families lose their income overnight. I've experienced this firsthand, and I'm going to break down exactly what's happening in the tech industry right now, because if you're a programmer, if you're thinking about working in tech, if you're currently employed at one of these companies, you need to hear this. The conventional narrative is simple. Companies say, "We hired too many people. The market changed. We need to optimize. It's nothing personal." But that's a lie. If you look at the actual data, if you examine what's really happening, you see a different story. A story about greed, a story about exploitation, a story about an industry that has become completely disconnected from reality. Let me show you what I mean. In 2022, the tech industry had 165,000 layoffs. The narrative was, the pandemic bubble burst. Companies overspent. They need to cut back to be sustainable. That made sense. It was painful, but it made sense. In 2023, that number jumped to 262,000, the worst year in tech history. The new narrative was, companies hired too many people. They're bloated. They need to streamline. Again, painful, but logical. By 2024, layoffs continued at 152,000 per year. But now the language started changing. Companies stopped talking about financial crisis and started talking about restructuring, about optimization, about doing more with less. And in 2025, we had 130,000 layoffs. But here's where it got interesting. Companies started adding a new justification to their official statements. They started blaming artificial intelligence. We need to reduce headcount to invest in AI. We're automating roles. We need to be leaner to compete in the AI era. This is the cover story. This is the excuse, and it's working. Because when you blame technology, when you blame market forces, people accept it. It doesn't feel like you're being fired because your company wants to maximize profits. It feels like you're being sacrificed to the inevitable march of progress. But 2026 is different, and that's what terrifies me. We're already at 144,000 layoffs, and we're only in May. At this rate, we're going to shatter the 2023 record. We're going to have the worst year in tech history, not because the industry is in crisis, but because the industry has discovered something beautiful, from a profit perspective. You can fire people and make more money. Think about that. Let it sink in. The companies aren't cutting costs. They're increasing profits while cutting people. They fired 10,000 people and their stock went up. Their revenue went up. Their investor satisfaction went up. This is the new playbook. This is what's happening right now, and it's only accelerating. I've worked at Amazon. They cut 16,000 people in one quarter, then reported $716 billion in annual revenue. No crisis, no financial emergency, just pure, unadulterated cost-cutting to boost quarterly earnings. I've worked at Meta. They cut 8,000 people, announced $135 million investment in AI. The message was clear. We don't need you anymore. We're investing in robots. Instead. I've worked at Claude. They fired people by hundreds, watched their valuation skyrocket, celebrated it publicly, actually celebrated it. And here's the most insane part. The programmers who survived the layoff. We're supposed to be grateful. We're supposed to be thankful we still have a job. We're not supposed to question why our colleagues were fired while executives got bonuses. This is the psychological manipulation that's happening right now in the tech industry. If you're a programmer and you're currently employed at a major tech company, I want you to understand something. You are not safe. No matter how good you are, no matter how valuable you think you are one quarterly earnings report away from being fired. And it will have nothing to do with your performance. It will have nothing to do with your skills. It will have everything to do with a spreadsheet somewhere, a calculation that determined that your salary plus benefits is more than the value of your output. And that value calculation is increasingly done by AI, not by humans, by algorithms, not by your manager, by machines that don't understand the human cost of what they're doing. I've watched brilliant programmers get fired, programmers who built entire systems, programmers who were mentors, programmers who had families, mortgages, kids in school, fired in a single email, given 2 weeks severance, told they were transitioning roles. This is not innovation. This is not progress. This is cruelty disguised as business efficiency. And what makes me angry is that nobody is talking about this. The tech media celebrates every layoff. They call it necessary restructuring. They treat it like it's a rational business decision that deserves respect. But it's not. It's exploitation. If you're watching this and you work in tech, I need you to understand something. You have value. Your skills have value. But the companies you work for don't see you as valuable. They see you as a cost, and they're constantly calculating whether that cost can be reduced. This is why I started creating content about this. This is why I'm making this video, because if one programmer watches this and decides to negotiate better severance, if one programmer decides to get an employment lawyer before accepting a severance package, if one programmer decides to leave a toxic company before they're forced out, then this video has been worth it. If you're watching this for the first time, I'm begging you to subscribe, because what's happening in tech right now is a warning sign. It's a preview of what's coming to other industries. It's a test run of how much exploitation workers will accept if you package it as progress. Leave a comment. Tell me your story. If you've been laid off, tell me what happened. If you're currently at a company that's treating you like a cost instead of a human, tell me that. If you're thinking about leaving tech entirely, tell me that too. Because when we share these stories, when we break the silence, when we refuse to accept the narrative they're selling us, that's when things begin to change. After I left the tech industry, I started researching what was really happening. I wanted to understand the mechanism. I wanted to see if this was coordinated or if it was just individual companies following the same profit maximization strategy. What I discovered was shocking. There's a term in business called unjust enrichment. It's when a company makes profits through unethical means. Not illegal means. Just unethical. Just wrong. And that's what's happening in tech right now. The companies aren't cutting people because they need to survive. They're cutting people because cutting people is more profitable than keeping them. It's a simple equation. Fire 10,000 people, save $1 billion in salaries and benefits, invest $100 million in AI, pocket $900 million in pure profit. And the stock market rewards this behavior. The investors celebrate, the executives get bonuses, and the fired programmers are left wondering what happened. I've talked to dozens of laid-off programmers since I started making content about this, and there's a pattern, a clear, undeniable pattern. The companies that lay off the most people are the ones that profit the most. The companies that treat their employees the worst are the ones that investors like the best. The companies that are most ruthless are the ones that thrive in this environment. This is Darwinian capitalism at its most brutal. One programmer I spoke to, let's call him David, worked at Amazon for 8 years. 8 years of loyalty. 8 years of building systems that generated billions in revenue. And one day, he got a message. Your role is being eliminated. David had a mortgage. David had 2 kids in private school. David was 3 years away from fully vesting his stock options, but none of that mattered. The algorithm decided his cost exceeded his value, and he was gone. Another programmer, Sarah, worked at Meta. She was promoted to senior engineer. She was leading projects. She was mentoring junior developers. And one Tuesday morning, she walked into the office and discovered that her access had been revoked. She couldn't get into the building. She couldn't access her email. She had to learn about her termination from an internal memo she read online. The company didn't even have the decency to fire her in person. They did it electronically, like she was a piece of code that had been deleted. This is what the tech industry has become. But here's what I want to talk about, because this isn't just about individual horror stories. This is about a systemic problem. This is about an industry that has lost all moral compass. The problem starts with the venture capital model. Startups are funded with the expectation of hypergrowth. Move fast and break things. That's the mantra. Build fast. Don't worry about sustainability. Don't worry about consequences. Just grow. And for the first few years, that model works. Companies hire rapidly. They build products. They burn through cash like it's infinite, which, if you have investor backing, it kind of is. But then one of two things happens. Either the company goes public or it reaches a plateau where investors demand profitability. And suddenly, all that hypergrowth has to convert into actual profit. And the easiest way to do that is to cut people. The companies that hired 1,000 people in the growth phase suddenly realize they only need 500. But they can't just say that. They can't admit that they made a mistake. So they invent a narrative. We hired for growth. That growth didn't materialize the way we expected. Now we're adjusting. But that's not true. The growth did materialize, the revenue is up, the users are engaged, the profits are strong. What happened is that the companies realized they don't need as many people to maintain that revenue, that humans are optional, that optimization means elimination. And so they cut and cut and cut. I've watched companies go through restructuring 4 times in 5 years. Each time they fired 5% of their workforce. Each time they said it was the last time. Each time, productivity increased because the remaining people had to work harder to fill the gap, and each time that increased productivity justified the next round of layoffs. This is the cycle, this is the trap, this is the system that's consuming the tech industry right now. What breaks my heart is that programmers aren't stupid, we're not naive. We understand the financial pressures, we understand capitalism, we understand that companies have to make profit to survive. But there's a difference between making a reasonable profit and treating human beings like disposable resources. There's a difference between cutting costs and cutting souls. And I don't think that difference matters anymore to the people running these companies. The tech industry has been infected by a particular strain of capitalism that only cares about extraction, extract value, extract profit, extract growth, extract optimization. And when you've extracted everything you can from the humans, extract the humans themselves. This is why I left. This is why I started talking about this, because I can't be part of a system that treats people like this, and I can't stay silent while it happens. If you're watching this and you work in tech, I want you to know something. What's happening to you is not normal. What they're doing to you is not okay. The narrative they're selling you about necessary restructuring is a lie designed to make you accept your own exploitation. You have value. Your work has value, and you deserve to be treated with dignity. If you're thinking about taking a job at a major tech company, I want you to understand what you're getting into. You're not getting into a partnership. You're getting into a transactional relationship where your value is constantly being calculated and recalculated, where you can be eliminated on a spreadsheet, where loyalty is a one-way street. That doesn't mean don't take the job. The money is good. The benefits are real. The experience is valuable. But go in with your eyes open. Know what you're agreeing to. Build your network. Save your money. Because the day will come when the algorithm decides you're no longer profitable. And when that day comes, make sure you're ready. If you're currently employed at a company like this, I want you to know that it's okay to leave. It's okay to prioritize your own mental health. It's okay to walk away from the money if the cost to your soul is too high. I've talked to so many programmers who stayed too long, who tried to convince themselves that the next promotion would make it okay, who told themselves that the stock options would eventually make the exploitation worth it. And then they got laid off anyway. And all that loyalty meant nothing. So this is my message. If you're a programmer in 2026, if you're working in the tech industry right now, if you're thinking about your future in this space, know that you have options. Know that you have power. Know that you don't have to accept the way you're being treated. And know that there are other people who understand what you're going through, who've survived the same thing, who've built their lives after tech. You're not alone, and you're not disposable. If you're watching this and you believe this is important content, if you believe programmers need to hear this, if you believe the tech industry needs to be held accountable, then subscribe. Leave a comment. Share this with other tech workers. Because when we break the silence, when we refuse to accept the narrative, when we speak our truth, that's when things change. My name is Marcus. I'm a former tech worker, and I'm here to tell you the truth about what's really happening in the industry right now. This is that truth.